hijack Brexit to sell out our National Health Service and the working people of this country. He's trying to cash in on the votes of millions who voted to leave the EU by buying political power for himself and then sell them out with another dose of austerity in the future. That is all that Johnson offers. It's time to call him out. I travel all around the country all the time, not just during the election campaign. I've been to almost 100 constituencies since the last election. And I meet a lot of people and I listen intently to a lot of people in community centres, schools, meetings, houses, lots of places, and just listen to what they have to say. People who voted leave in 2016 and people who voted to remain. I listened to them all. They all have their reasons. But I want to tell you something that I find absolutely striking. Many people voted to leave tell me they were voting for change because that's what they were promised. Boris Johnson and the Leave campaign promised to rebuild our NHS, and they promised that people would be able to take back control of their lives after years of watching their towns being run down, underfunded, factories gone, jobs gone, that sense of community damaged and destroyed, high streets replaced with roller-blind shutters of closed shops, the misery of seeing libraries, swimming pools closed and sold off, sports facilities unaffordable for so many young people. That is the legacy of what this government is about. 3 years on, and Johnson is trying to hijack that hope for change and use it for his very different ways, his different ends. He stood in front of a bus in 2016 and promised 350 million a week for the NHS. Now we find out that 500 million a week could be taken out of the NHS and handed to big drugs companies under his plans for a sellout trade deal with Donald Trump and the USA. And just look at how those corporations operate in the United States. They are absolutely ruthless. They will suck as much money as they can out of our NHS while cancer patients wait longer for treatment. We now know that US and UK officials have been discussing drug pricing in secret. And the US government is demanding what officials gently call full market access for US products. Senior National Health Service managers have said that would mean higher prices for medicines, which will pass on costs to both patients and the NHS. So here we have it. Johnson can deny all he likes, but people simply will not believe him. And the Tories know that, which is why, behind the scenes, the Conservatives have tried to suppress the news, attacking the BBC for reporting what we and health professionals are saying. That's why they don't want you to hear a vote for Johnson's Conservatives is a vote to betray our NHS in a sellout to Trump. Johnson's Trump deal Brexit puts a price tag on our National Health Service. So we'll say it again and again until the message gets through to the White House. Our NHS is not for sale. The threat... I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Shout it loud and shout it clear on the doorsteps. Make sure they all hear it. The threat to our NHS isn't a mistake. It's not happening by accident. The threat is there because Boris Johnson's Conservatives want to hijack Brexit, to sell out the NHS and to sell out working people by stripping away their rights. For many in the Tory party, this is what Brexit has always been about, reversing the hard-fought gains won by working-class people over generations. Given the chance, they'll run down our rights at work, our entitlements to holidays, breaks and leave. Given the chance, they'll slash food standards to match those of the United States, where what are called acceptable levels of rat hairs in paprika and maggots in orange juice are allowed, and they'll put chlorinated chicken on our supermarket shelves. And given the chance, they'll water down the rules on air pollution and our environment that keep us safe. They want a race to the bottom in standards and protections. They want to move us towards a more deregulated American model of how to run the economy. In the US, as Keir pointed out, workers get just 10 days holiday a year. Big business gets free rein to call the shots, and tens of millions of working class Americans are denied any health care at all. What Boris Johnson's Conservatives want is to hijack Brexit to unleash Thatcherism on steroids on our society. Yeah. The Thatcher government's attack on the working people of our country left scars that have never healed, and communities all over this country that have never recovered. I was in Laura's constituency last year. Steelworks gone, factories gone, shops closed, the whole area suffering from years of government neglect because of what Thatcher and her government did in the 1980s. Our job is to reverse that for all parts of Britain. North, south, east, west, Scotland, Wales, all over. The Conservatives know they can't win support for what they're planning to do. They're planning to do it in the name of Thatcherism. So they're trying to do it under the banner of Brexit instead. So I make no apologies at all, for Labour's role in stopping the disaster of no deal and resisting Johnson's sellout deal. I make no apologies for delaying things in order to make sure that no deal was taken off the table before we hit the streets in our election campaign. And we made that decision exactly 168 hours ago at this moment. Never let them tell you that Labour has turned its back on the people we represent. The Tories have failed on Brexit for 3 years. A Labour government will get Brexit sorted within 6 months by giving you, the British people, the final say. And despite what some commentators want you to believe, Labour's plan for Brexit is clear and simple. It's time to take a decision out of the hands of politicians and trust the people to decide. It won't be a rerun of 2016. This time, the choice will be between leaving with a sensible deal or remaining in the EU. That is the policy. It really isn't very complicated. So, an incoming Labour government will first secure a sensible deal. That will take no longer than 3 months, because the deal will be based on terms that we've already discussed with the EU, including a new customs union, a close single market relationship, and absolute guarantees of rights and protections. It's a deal that will protect manufacturing industry in this country and respect the precious Good Friday peace agreement in Northern Ireland, which was one of the great achievements of the Labour Party. And then we'll put that deal to a public vote. So, if you want to leave the EU without trashing our economy or selling out of our NHS, you'll be able to vote for it. If you want to remain in the EU, you'll be able to vote for that. Either way, only a Labour government will put the final decision in your hands, because this has involved the whole country from the start. It can't now be left to politicians. To finally get this sorted and move forward, we need the people to sign on the dotted line. And we will immediately carry out your decision so Britain can get beyond Brexit. Boris Johnson staked his reputation on leaving the EU on the 31st of October. Do or die, ditches were mentioned, many things were mentioned, and lots of Churchillian language was used. No ifs, no buts, he said. So, the failure to do so, I'm sorry, can only be his, Boris Johnson's failure. The irony is, for all his boasting, Johnson's sellout deal still won't get Brexit done. It will lead to years of continuing negotiations and uncertainty. Whereas Labour's plan will sort it quickly, because whatever the final decision, we won't be ripping up our main trading relationship. The EU negotiator, Michel Barnier, has said an EU deal on Johnson's term would take 3 years, maybe more, of further negotiations. Johnson's sellout deal with Trump could take even longer. Imagine the time it would take to fill all those pork barrels in the US Senate and all the other places. Just imagine it, think about it. So, a vote for Conservatives is a vote for yet more drawn-out, bogged-down negotiations, more broken promises and more distractions from the vital issues facing us that Keir and Laura have spoken about this morning. Like making sure people have decent wages, secure homes, and, absolutely crucially in this election beyond all others, a habitable, sustainable planet for our children and our grandchildren. A green light for Boris Johnson's sellout Trump deal would just be the start of years more Brexit chaos and division. People sometimes accuse me of trying to talk to both sides at once in the Brexit debate, to people who voted Leave and people who voted Remain. Do you know what? They're dead right. They're absolutely dead right. Why would I only want to talk to half the country? I don't want to live in half a country. Anyone seeking to become Prime Minister must talk to and listen to the whole country. Labour stands not just for the 52% or the 48%, but for the 99%, which bring people together. It's Labour that's determined to bring our divided country together. You can't do that if your whole political strategy is to turn one side of the Brexit debate against the other. The Tories are offering an extreme and damaging form of Brexit, while the Liberal Democrats want to ignore the result of the 2016 referendum and revoke Article 50. The Brexit crisis does need to be resolved, but it must be done democratically. Because walk down any street in Britain and you'll find people who voted to leave and people who voted to remain. Whatever our differences may be on this one issue, at the end of the day, we have so much else in common. I'd like to put it like this. If you're living here in Harlow, you may have voted to leave. You've got bills to pay. You've got rising debts. Your work may be insecure. Your wages insufficient, and you can barely stretch the money to meet the needs of you and your family. You're up against it. If you're living in York, for example, it's more likely you voted Remain. You've got bills to pay, you've got rising debts, your work is insecure, and your wages barely stretch to meet your family's needs. You're up against it. But between a Leave voter in Harlow and a Remain voter in York, you're not against each other. Labour's plan. Labour's plan will get Brexit sorted so a Labour government can get on with delivering the real change that Britain needs. So we can get on with rebuilding our NHS and making prescriptions free and bringing in generic medicines improving our NHS. And we can get on with solving the housing crisis by building 1 million new homes and controlling rents in the private rented sector. Get on with bringing mail, rail and water and the energy grid into public ownership. Thus ending the great corporate rip-off of consumers. Get on with creating the hundreds of thousands of good jobs in every community through a green industrial revolution. Get on with giving Britain a pay rise. Let's get Brexit sorted within 6 months and build a fairer country that truly cares for all, where wealth and power are shared for the many, not the few. This election is a once-in-a-generation chance. The future is ours to make together. It's time for real change. Thank you.